All right, welcome to another deep dive into some fascinating stuff. We love digging into complex topics and giving you, our listeners, the lowdown without the hassle of plowing through tons of dense reading.
Right.
And today we're going to be delving into the world of 13th century logic, specifically focusing on Lambert of Auxerre.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, so Lambert might not be a household name like, I don't know, Aristotle or something,
Right.
but his textbook on logic, called the Summa Lamberti, was a big deal back in the day.
It really was, yeah.
And it offers some really intriguing insights into how people thought about language and argumentation way back then.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of these ideas are surprisingly relevant even today.
They are, absolutely.
So get ready, folks. We're about to time travel back to the medieval world of logic.
Buckle up.
And trust me, it's going to be a thought-provoking ride. So first things first, the Summa Lamberti. It was one of the big four logic textbooks during a period known as the Terminus period. That's roughly from 1175 to 1270.
Yeah, 1175 to 1270.
So what was so special about this Terminus period? What were they all about?
Well, you see, they were really into breaking down language to its core components, especially what they called terms,
Terms, okay.
which are basically the words we use. They wanted to understand the fundamental properties of these terms and how they worked in logical reasoning. And the Summa Lamberti, well, it really represents like a sophisticated culmination of this intense focus on language and its structure.
I see. So they were kind of like the linguistic detectives of their time,
Yeah, I like that.
breaking down language into its building blocks.
Exactly. They really wanted to get granular, focusing on how terms stand for things in a proposition. And this was actually a huge step forward because it allowed for a much more precise analysis of whether arguments were logically valid.
Right, because it goes beyond just knowing what individual words mean, right?
Right. It's about how they function together.
It's about the relationships and how they fit within a statement.
Exactly.
So we've got Lambert of Auxerre, but there's a bit of a mystery surrounding his identity, isn't there?
Yeah, a bit of a medieval whodunit.
Oh.
It's not like we've got a nice, clear-cut biography or anything like that.
Right.
We've got mentions of a Lambert of Ligny-le-Châtel and a Lambert of Lagny, and scholars have been going back and forth trying to figure out which one actually penned the Summa.
Right, a bit of a puzzle.
Yeah. So one candidate is Lambert of Auxerre. Now, he was a master of arts, a canon in Auxerre. That's a city in France, by the way, and he later joined the Dominicans. There's even a chance that he tutored the future king of Navarre before heading to Paris to refine his Summa.
Oh, wow, so rubbing shoulders with royalty.
Potentially.
Interesting. And the other Lambert, what's his story?
The other main contender is Lambert of Lagny. He was a secular clerk from Meaux.
Okay.
And the story goes that he taught Theobald II in Pamplona, probably composing the first version of the Summa around then. He later edited it in Paris and then eventually joined the Dominicans himself. So both of them have these connections to Paris, which was a major hub of intellectual activity at the time.
Right, so we've got these two possible Lamberts,
Two intriguing possibilities.
each with their own unique path.
It's kind of fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. For clarity, shall we just stick with Lambert for our deep dive?
I think that's wise. Let's not get bogged down in a debate that's still ongoing.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, but I do think it adds an extra layer of intrigue to the whole thing.
It does. I mean, here we are, centuries later, still grappling with these fundamental questions about language and logic.
Exactly.
And the guy who wrote this key text, we're not even entirely sure who he was.
It just goes to show that even the biggest thinkers from the past can have these mysterious, shadowy backgrounds.
Absolutely.
We don't always get the full picture.
Right. So today, we're going to try to unpack some of the core ideas from Lambert's Summa Lamberti.
Yes.
We're going to delve into intriguing concepts like supposition, appellation, restriction, modality, and relations. Our mission, should we choose to accept it,
We choose to accept it.
is to understand what these terms meant to Lambert and why they mattered so much in the world of medieval philosophy.
Right, because these weren't just abstract ideas. They were part of a vibrant intellectual scene.
Exactly. So to kick things off, let's talk about where the Summa Lamberti fits into the bigger picture of intellectual history, right?
Its context is key.
It was a major logic textbook.
A comprehensive one.
Right. But it wasn't alone. It was in good company.
It was. There were other heavy hitters in the logic game at the time.
Like who?
Well, we've got Peter of Spain,
Yeah.
William of Sherwood, even the famous Roger Bacon. All of them were writing influential works on logic around the same time as Lambert.
So like a logic all-star team.
Exactly. And together, they represent what scholars call the Logica Modernorum. the logic of the moderns, so to speak. This was a new wave of thought, moving beyond the older, more purely Aristotelian logic of Vedas.
I see. So they were kind of pushing the boundaries of logic.
They were pushing the boundaries, yeah. This was the cutting edge of logical thinking in the 13th century.
So this Summa was like a real sign of the times, right?
It really was. It captures the essence of this intellectual ferment.
And what's fascinating is that a complete English translation of the Summa didn't appear until fairly recently.
Yeah, that's right. It was 2015 when Thomas S. Maloney gave us the full English version.
2015.
Which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Right, such an important text.
A cornerstone of medieval logic.
And it was only fully accessible in English relatively recently.
Yeah. Before that, scholars had to work with Latin editions or piece together partial translations.
So this whole process of rediscovering and understanding these texts is still very much ongoing.
Very much so. We're constantly learning new things, making new connections.
Right, it's not like history is just a closed book.
No, not at all.
Now, we talked about the connection to the King of Navarre. What does that tell us about when the Summa was actually written?
Well, that's one of our main clues for dating it. There's this colophon, which is basically an inscription at the end of a manuscript.
Right, like a little note.
Right. And this colophon, in a 14th century copy of the Summa, mentions Lambert as the teacher of the King of Navarre. Now, if we look at the timeline of Theobald II, who became king in 1253 and was born in 1240,
Okay.
scholars estimate that the Summa was probably written sometime between the 1240s and the 1260s. It was likely first drafted either in Troyes or Pamplona, and then later edited and published in Paris around 1260.
Okay, so right in the thick of this vibrant intellectual period.
Exactly. It was a time when people were really questioning and refining the tools of logic.
And Lambert was right there in the middle of it.
Right in the mix.
So what kind of topics did he actually cover in the Summa? Was it all just about these properties of terms that we mentioned earlier?
Well, according to the way L.M. Derick analyzed the text, it's divided into 11 chapters.
11 chapters, okay.
Covering a whole range of subjects.
So it was pretty comprehensive.
Oh, yeah, it was. He starts with the basics, like propositions and predicables. Those are ways of classifying predicates. And then he moves on to all these different types of arguments, syllogisms, dialectical reasoning, even how to deal with sophisms or logical fallacies. But then, yes, he dedicates a good chunk of the book to the properties of terms, including supposition, appellation, restriction, and others like ampliation and distribution.
So the nitty-gritty of how terms function.
Exactly.
And Maloney's translation, the one from 2015, is it structured differently?
A bit, yeah. Maloney's translation is based on a slightly different manuscript tradition, so he organizes the material into 8 chapters.
8 chapters, okay.
But the core stuff is still there. Those properties of terms still form a major section towards the end.
So regardless of the exact structure, it seems like the main focus was on these terms, how they combine into propositions.
Right.
And how those propositions are used to build arguments.
Exactly. That's the heart of it.
That's the heart of logic.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the real meat of Lambert's logic here. Let's talk about supposition and appellation.
All right.
You said these were key concepts in terminist logic, right?
Absolutely crucial.
So in simple terms, for our listeners who might not be familiar with these terms, what is supposition?
Okay, so supposition is all about how a term stands for something within a proposition. It's about how a word represents or refers to something in a specific context.
Hey, that's used so far.
Now, Lambert being Lambert,
Right.
he breaks this down into 4 different ways that the term supposition can be used. The first one is basically the designation or meaning of a thing, like what the word refers to in a general sense.
Like the dictionary definition.
Sort of, yeah, but more like the concept itself. Then the second way is about accepting a proposition as true within the context of a debate or a logical exercise.
Okay, so it's like a temporary acceptance for the sake of argument.
Exactly. Then the third way refers to the grammatical role of a term in relation to other parts of an expression, like how a noun functions with a verb, for example.
Okay, so the word's grammatical function.
Right. But the fourth way, this is the one that's really important for logic, according to Lambert.
Okay, give us the fourth way.
Okay, the fourth way is when a term is taken to stand for, well, it can stand for a few things. It can stand for itself, like if we're talking about the word itself.
Right, like the word.
Exactly. Or it can stand for what it signifies, like its meaning.
Okay.
Or for something that's logically contained under its meaning, like human standing for Socrates.
Socrates is a human.
Right. Or even for multiple things contained under its meaning, like human standing for all individual humans.
Okay, I see.
So this is the sense of supposition that Lambert sees as a fundamental logical property of terms.
Right. It's not just about meaning.
No.
It's about how that meaning functions within a logical framework.
Precisely. The other three ways, he argues, are more about semantics, rhetoric, or grammar, not really core logic.
So they were really trying to nail down this idea of how words work in arguments.
Exactly. And this whole meticulous categorization focusing on how terms stand for things within a proposition, this was a major breakthrough. It really allowed them to analyze the validity of arguments with a level of detail that hadn't been achieved before.
Because you're looking at the specific role a word plays within a statement.
Right.
Not just its general definition, but its function in that specific context.
Obviously.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. Now, what about appellation? How is that different from supposition?
Okay, so Lambert, he defines appellation in 4 ways as well. First, just as a proper name.
Like Socrates.
Exactly, Socrates. Then second, as the assertion of a common nature that applies to more than one thing.
Okay, so like saying something has the nature of whiteness.
Perfect example. Third, when a term is taken to stand for something falling under its meaning, regardless of whether those things actually exist, are just potential or even imaginary.
So a unicorn could fall under the appellation of mythical creature,
Exactly.
even though they're not real in the same way as, say, a horse.
Precisely. You've got it. And then the fourth way, the logical sense of appellation, is when a term stands for a suppositum or supposita, meaning the things it refers to that actually exist.
Ah, so there's this added element of actual existence.
Right. It's not just about potential or imaginary things.
It's about what's really out there in the world.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that appellation started as a broader, more grammatical term. In some earlier writings, it's even used kind of interchangeably with supposition.
Yeah.
But by the 13th century, it's becoming more precise, more technical, specifically in logical discussions.
So Lambert and his contemporaries are refining these concepts.
They're really sharpening the tools of logic.
And his 4 distinctions for appellation really reflect this shift towards greater precision.
They do. It's all about getting more specific, more rigorous.
So to recap, supposition is about a term standing for something in a proposition, while appellation, in its logical sense, adds this extra layer of referring to something that actually exists.
That's a great summary. You've nailed it.
And it's not just about the meaning of a word in isolation.
Right. It's not just about the dictionary definition.
It's about how it functions within a sentence, within an argument.
Exactly. And Lambert, like other terminus logicians, emphasized that supposition comes after signification. So a word has its own meaning, right?
Right.
But it only takes on a specific supposition when it's actually used in a phrase or a sentence.
Okay, so context matters.
Context is key.
And there are all sorts of different kinds of supposition, too.
Oh, yeah. Lambert goes into a lot of detail about that.
Like we saw this rather complex-looking diagram in one of the sources, listing all these different types. Natural, accidental, simple, personal, discrete. It was a bit overwhelming.
It's quite a taxonomy, that's for sure.
Right, a lot to unpack there.
We probably don't need to get into the nuances of every single type right now.
Probably not.
But one that's particularly interesting is Lambert's idea of natural supposition. He says that this is what a term possesses on its own, simply by its inherent meaning, when it's uttered in isolation outside of a sentence.
So like the word dog just by itself.
Precisely. Just dog, with no other words around it.
Okay, but how does that work if supposition is supposed to happen within a sentence?
Well, Lambert's got an answer for that.
Yeah.
He distinguishes between supposition as a kind of signification. Remember, that's the first way he defined it, the basic meaning.
Right.
And supposition as a specific property within a sentence, which is that fourth logically relevant way we talked about. So natural supposition aligns with that first sense of basic meaning.
Okay, I see. So it's like the inherent meaning that the word carries even before it's used in a sentence.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that other logicians, like Peter of Spain, also had similar ideas about natural supposition.
So it was a concept that was floating around in this intellectual space.
Yeah, it suggests a shared understanding or perhaps influence from even earlier sources.
Interesting. And then there's this other type, discrete supposition, where a term refers to a single specific individual, like in the statement, Socrates is wise.
Ah, yes, discrete supposition.
How did Lambert deal with that one?
He considered discrete supposition to be a type of personal supposition.
Okay.
Which is interesting because it puts him in a particular camp among logicians of his time.
Okay. How so?
Well, some logicians didn't really address discrete supposition directly, while others excluded it from their classifications altogether.
Oh, wow. So there was disagreement even on what to include.
Yeah, there were different schools of thought.
Different approaches.
Some even thought that discrete terms could have either simple or personal supposition, depending on the context.
Okay, so it wasn't a settled issue.
Not at all.
And Lambert's take on it was unique in a way.
Yeah. Some later commentators even thought his view was a bit inconsistent, but it's definitely a distinctive feature of his approach.
Okay, so we're starting to see the complexities of these logical categories.
Yeah, it's not simple stuff.
Now, let's move on to restriction, which sounds like it's about narrowing things down.
Yeah, it's about limiting the scope of a term. The idea is that the supposition of a term, what it stands for, can be restricted to a smaller set than what its general meaning would normally cover.
Okay, so like zooming in on a specific part of a broader category.
Exactly. And Lambert, as you might expect, distinguishes between two main types of restriction: natural restriction and use-based restriction.
What's the difference between the two?
Natural restriction happens because of other terms that are added to the term being restricted.
Okay,
A classic example is white horse.
white horse, okay.
The term horse by itself could refer to any horse in the world, right?
Right.
But when you add white, you naturally restrict its supposition to only those horses that are, well, white.
White horses, yeah.
And this restriction comes from the inherent meaning of the modifying word, in this case, white.
Right, so it's like adding adjectives to a noun.
Exactly. It makes
Yeah.
it more specific.
More precise.
Right. Now, use-based restriction, this is where things get even more interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
Use-based, or sometimes called use-governed, restriction doesn't come from any additional words in the sentence itself, but rather from the specific context in which the sentence is spoken.
So it's all about the situation.
Context is king, yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Lambert's example is, the king is coming.
The king is coming. Okay.
Now, the term king here isn't modified by an adjective or anything.
No, just king.
Right. But in a specific context, we understand it to refer to the king of the particular country or region where the sentence is being said.
Ah, I see. So if you're in England
If you're in England,
and you say the king is coming.
everyone knows you're talking about the British monarch.
Right, while in Spain, it would be the Spanish monarch.
Exactly. The word king hasn't changed,
No.
but its meaning in that specific situation has been restricted.
Restricted by context.
Precisely.
It's almost like Lambert anticipated some of these modern ideas about pragmatics, right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's about how the meaning of a word can change, depending on how it's used, who's saying it, and where it's being said.
Exactly. And what's really significant is that this idea of use-based restriction, you don't find this as a specific category in the works of other logicians like William of Sherwood or Peter of Spain.
Really?
Nope.
So it's unique to Lambert.
It's a distinctive feature of his theory.
So that tells us something about his approach to logic.
It does. It shows that he had a very nuanced understanding of how context plays a role in shaping meaning.
He was really paying attention to the practicalities of language, not just the abstract rules.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time in some ways.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about modality.
Uh,
Now we're venturing into the realm of necessity and possibility, right?
we are indeed. We're talking about whether things must be true, could be true, or can't be true.
Okay, those are pretty big questions.
They are.
So how did Lambert tackle this?
Well, he focused on the 6 basic alithic modalities: truth, falsity, necessity, impossibility, possibility, and contingency.
Okay, so those are like the fundamental categories of modal logic.
Exactly. And he's pretty much in line with other logicians of his time, like Robert Kilwardby and Roger Bacon.
Okay.
They're all working within this framework. Interestingly, Lambert sometimes treats possibility and contingency as being the same thing,
Okay.
but then he also distinguishes a specific type of contingency called contingency ad rutrum libet, which means something is neither necessary nor impossible.
So it could go either way,
It could go either way. It could be true or it could be false.
like a coin toss.
Yeah, like a coin toss. Now, for the most part, Lambert's treatment of modality is fairly standard, sticking close to Aristotelian ideas,
Okay.
especially when it comes to the rules for converting modal propositions. That's basically how you can rearrange the subject and predicate while keeping the logical meaning the same.
Gotcha.
But there's one area where Lambert goes deeper than some of his contemporaries. The rules for converting contingent propositions, particularly the negative ones, with this contingency ad utrum libet.
So he's getting into the weeds.
He's getting into the weeds, yeah. It suggests that he was really wrestling with some of the more challenging aspects of modal logic.
Really trying to iron out the detail.
Exactly. It shows the level of rigor and depth that was going on in these discussions.
Fascinating. Even in these abstract realms of logic, there's this constant drive to refine and clarify.
Absolutely. It was a dynamic field.
Okay, our last key concept for today is relations. How did Lambert understand this idea of connecting different concepts?
Well, he actually discusses relation in two main senses. The first one is the Aristotelian category of relation,
Okay.
which is about how things are connected to each other, like superiority and inferiority,
Okay.
or the relationship between a quality and the thing that possesses that quality.
Right, red and apple.
Exactly. But the second sense, which is more important for logic, defines a relation as, and I'm quoting here, a calling to mind of a thing that has gone before.
Calling to mind.
So it's about how certain words or grammatical structures link back to something that was mentioned earlier or is already understood.
So like in the sentence, Peter is taller than Paul. The phrase taller than connects Peter back to Paul.
Exactly. It creates a relation between them.
And this definition really highlights how language builds upon itself.
It does, yeah. It shows how we use words to create connections and build meaning.
And what's interesting is that Lambert's definition of relation in this sense is very similar to Peter of Spain's.
Yeah, almost word for word.
So they're on the same page.
They're definitely drawing from similar sources or influences.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with these core concepts. What about Lambert's lasting influence? Was the Summa Lamberti just another textbook, or did it have a real impact on later thinkers?
That's a great question. And as we've already talked about with the uncertainties around dating and everything, tracing influence can be tricky.
Right, it's not always a straight line.
No. But there's definitely evidence that the Summa was pretty widely known by the late 13th century.
Okay.
For example, a manuscript of the Summa was donated to the library at the Sorbonne in Paris in 1280.
The sort of...
Yeah. And it was actually used as a standard textbook there for quite a while.
Oh, so it made its way into the curriculum.
It did.
It became part of the intellectual landscape.
Exactly. So it was clearly seen as a valuable and authoritative work.
What about specific examples of Lambert's ideas showing up in the work of later thinkers?
Well, there are some intriguing possibilities that scholars have pointed out. Georgette Sinclair, for example, has argued that Lambert's discussion of composition and division, these are logical operations, influenced Roger Bacon's treatment of those same topics.
Okay, so direct connection there.
Potentially, yeah. And then we've got Martin Grabman.
Okay.
He identified Lambert's influence in a later anonymous text on logic. This text also shows the influence of William of Sherwood and Peter of Spain.
So it's like Lambert is part of this intellectual lineage.
Right, they're all part of his ongoing conversation.
And Costantino Marmo suggested that the expanded notion of suppositio found in Duns Scotus
Duns Scotus, yeah, another major figure.
might have been inspired by Lambert's analysis, although he points out that it's not a direct word-for-word borrowing. But still, the influence is there.
The influence is there. And more recent scholarship actually suggests that Duns Scotus was definitely familiar with Lambert's work.
So Lambert's ideas were circulating.
They were circulating.
They were being picked up by these later thinkers.
Exactly. It's fascinating to see how these ideas travel through time.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting that we don't see much direct influence between Lambert and Peter of Spain,
Right, that's a bit of a puzzle.
even though they were contemporaries working on similar issues.
Yeah, it's curious. They're both deep into terminus logic, but there's not much to suggest they directly interacted or influenced each other.
So what's the explanation for that?
Well, scholars like Alessio and Brockhus have suggested that they might have both been drawing on a common set of sources from Paris.
Okay, like a shared intellectual well.
Exactly. And these sources could include even earlier figures like the author of the Dialectica Monacensis and William of Sherwood.
Okay, so it's like a whole web of intellectual exchange.
It is, yeah. It's not just the simple linear progression from one thinker to the next.
More like an ecosystem of ideas.
Precisely. And it reminds us that intellectual history is complex and messy.
It is. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Lambert of Auxerre and his Summa Lamberti, what would you say are the key takeaways?
Well, I think the main takeaway is just the sheer depth and nuance of Lambert's logical theories, his detailed analysis of supposition and appellation,
Right, those were his big
and
contributions.
his unique ideas on restriction, especially that concept of context-dependent or use-based restriction, were really groundbreaking.
He was really pushing the boundaries of how we think about language.
He was. And his Summa, it really stands as a crucial text in the development of terminus logic and the Logica Modernorum.
It's a testament to the level of sophistication that was happening in logic during this period.
Absolutely.
And it reminds us that even fields that seem very abstract, like logic, were areas of dynamic development and innovation in the medieval era.
Yeah, they weren't just sitting around reading Aristotle. They were actively developing new ideas and challenging old assumptions.
They were pushing the field forward.
And the debates about Lambert's identity and the dating of his work, well, those just show us that historical scholarship is always a work in progress.
It's not about finding definitive answers.
No, it's about continually asking questions, revisiting evidence, and refining our understanding.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Exactly. And it's a conversation that's still relevant today.
So, for our final thought today, let's consider this. How might these incredibly detailed analyses of language and meaning undertaken by medieval logicians like Lambert, with their focus on concepts like supposition and the impact of context, still hold relevance for us in the 21st century? I mean, could understanding these centuries-old debates offer us a fresh perspective on contemporary discussions in fields like linguistics, the philosophy of language, even in the rapidly evolving field of artificial intelligence, and how machines understand and process human language?
That's a really interesting question.
Right. Because these are still very much live issues.
They are. The way we use language, how we interpret meaning, these are fundamental questions that cut across disciplines.
Absolutely. And maybe by looking back at how these issues were grappled with centuries ago.
We can gain new insights into how we approach them today.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the past isn't just something that's over and done with.
It's a resource.
A source of inspiration and insight.
That can help us better understand the present.
And maybe even shape the future.
Perhaps so.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And until next time, keep those intellectual gears turning.